It was a dark, blistery evening on the island of Sodor. Sir Topham Hatt had closed the railway early due to the weather. The engines were at Knapford, waiting for the signal to return to their sheds. "Maybe one of us should tell a story to pass the time," Thomas suggested. The other engines liked Thomas's idea. "I have the perfect story for tonight," James said with a sly grin. Once everyone was listening, James began. "A long time ago, there was a little blue engine who was always eager to help." "Blue engine," said the station master one night, "would you please go to the end of the line and pick up a coach that was left behind?" "Of course," the eager engine replied, and he set out into the dark, foggy night. By the time the little blue engine reached the end of the line, the fog was so thick that he could hardly see anything. "I'll just have to wait until the morning," the engine said to himself, and he settled into an old shed for the night. But late that night, the little blue engine awoke to a noise coming from the shed. Creak! He opened his eyes and saw long fingers reaching towards him through the floorboards. There was a monster under the shed. Terrified, the blue engine raced out of the shed with the horrible engine-eating monster chasing after him. "What happened?" Percy asked timidly. "That's where the story ends," said James. "No one ever heard from that little blue engine again." "What about the monster?" Percy whispered.
"Don't be silly, Percy," Gordon said with a chuckle. "It's just a story."
"But what if the story is true?" Percy asked Thomas on their way to the sheds. "What if the engine-eating monster is out there right now?" "Stop being such a scaredy cat, Percy," Thomas answered. "There's no such thing as monsters." Late that night, after all the engines had settled into the sheds, the engines were startled by a terrible racket coming from Percy's shed. "There's a monster in my shed!" wailed Percy. "Gordon! Thomas! Help!" Suddenly, James appeared roaring with laughter. He had been rattling some scrap metal in front of the sheds. "I'm the monster! I'm the monster!" James laughed. Percy was embarrassed. "It's okay, Percy," said Toby. "Sometimes your imagination can make things scarier than they actually are." And after that, everyone went back to sleep. But even later that night, Thomas woke up with a fright. He had heard a strange noise. Scratch, scratch. "Stop it, James," snapped Thomas. But James was sound asleep. Scratch, scratch. "If it's not James," thought Thomas, "then who's making the noise? Maybe I do have a monster under my shed." And he stayed awake all night just to be safe. Thomas was awfully tired when he met Percy at the docks the next morning. "Did you hear any strange noises in your shed last night?" Thomas asked. "Not after James's silly prank," Percy replied. Now Thomas felt silly for staying up all night. By the middle of the day, Thomas was very sleepy and running far behind schedule. "You look as if you need Henry's special coal," chuckled Clarabelle. "Are you sure you're okay?" asked Annie. "I'm just a little tired," Thomas answered. He didn't want anyone to know that he had been too frightened to sleep. Just then, James sped by on the express track. "What's the matter, Thomas?" he laughed. "The monster keep you up at night?" And James disappeared down the track, laughing loudly. By the end of the day, Thomas barely had enough steam to make it back to the yard. The other engines were telling stories again, but Thomas headed straight for the sheds. He was all alone in the sheds, but it didn't take long for him to go to sleep. That night, Thomas woke with a fright. Scratch! Scratch! The noises were back, and they were definitely coming from under the shed. "Who's there?" Thomas whispered. "Creak, creak. Go away, monster!" Thomas closed his eyes. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. It's just outside the door, Thomas yipped. And there's its head. Help, Gordon. But only the monster heard him. Thump, 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 thump. Thomas was too frightened to move. He peered into the dark. And there it was, the horrible engine-eating monster. Thomas could see its eyes glowing in the night. He squeezed his eyes shut. Gordon, Toby, Percy, James, help! Save me from the monster!
Thomas, laughed Gordon, open your eyes.
Why are you laughing, Gordon? Snapped Thomas. There's a monster outside of my shed.
Not anymore, Gordon replied. Now it's inside your shed.
Thomas opened one eye very slowly.
A hedgehog? Thomas was surprised. I was afraid of a tiny little hedgehog? Everyone laughed. Thomas was very embarrassed, but even he couldn't help laughing for a bit. You know, Thomas, said Gordon, still chuckling, Percy has a good imagination, but I think yours is even better.
I think you're right, agreed Thomas. It's the only thing in the world that could turn a tiny hedgehog into a big, scary monster.